Today on Network Africa, history is made in the Zambia elections as President Edgar Lungu gains more than the required 50% of votes to be declared winner in the country's presidential elections. A judge in South Africa slams a woman with a 10-year sentence for kidnapping Zephany nurse from her hospital bed 19 years ago. Plus, with El Niño holding back the rains in southern Africa, Mozambique figures find a way out. Welcome everyone, I am BC Adebayo. Well, let's kick off today's show with a quick review of stories that made headlines over the weekend.
Alleged rebels killed at least 36 civilians in northeastern Democratic Republic of Congo, marking the deadliest massacre in the conflict-ravaged region this year. In a statement by the provincial governor, Julien Paluku, the attackers hacked 22 men and 14 women to death in their homes and in fields on the outskirts of the local commercial hub in Beni. Local activists say more than 500 civilians have been killed near Beni since October 2014, most in overnight raids by rebels carried out with machetes and hatchets. Elsewhere, fighting flared in South Sudan late on Saturday, southwest of the capital, between forces loyal to the president and those backing the opposition, after clashes last month raised fears of a slide back into civil war. Witnesses had reported heavy gunfire around Yei, which lies on a road linking the capital Juba with neighboring Uganda. The government and opposition each blamed the other side. Finally, President Edgar Lungu is leading in Zambia's presidential election, with 85% of the constituencies counted, but his main rival demanded a recount in a key district, citing irregularities. Lungu faces a stiff challenge from United Party for National Development leader Hakainde Hichilema, who accuses him of running the economy down, a charge the president has rejected.
There's a total mess going on here. The Electoral Commission is somehow conniving with people in the political arena to delay release of results. They start by refusing to issue polling station result certificate called G12.
With 50.14%, Lungu was ahead of Hichilema with 47.7% after results were collated from 132 of 156 constituencies in August 11 voting.
Zambia is experiencing a first in its elections. President Edgar Lungu got just a little over the required 50% in the country's presidential elections, ruling out any need for elections going into second round. According to the country's electoral commission, the president won by polling 50.35% of the total votes cast, while his main challenger, Hakainde Hichilema, polled 47.67%. Lungu's win was announced by the commission to the loud cheering of his supporters before the returning officer finished his sentence. While Zambians have been cheering the president on his win, the main opposition candidate says he will not recognize the result. He called them a coup on democracy, as according to him, the election did not meet the minimum requirement of a free and fair election. He says he had raised electoral anomalies, especially in Lusaka, to the Electoral Commission, and they had agreed that they would hold off on the announcement until a verification of votes was done. He has accused the president of colluding with the commission to go ahead with the announcement of the results. Well, Hakainde Hichilema is not the only candidate faulting results. As the only female candidate in the race, Edith Nawakwe says she believes some of the results were altered and described the outcome of the election as predetermined. Nawakwe is with the Forum for Democracy and Development and had run for the presidency in the 2015 presidential by-election, but finished third with 0.9% of the vote. We VOA's Anita Powell has been monitoring the latest. Well, she joins us now from Johannesburg. Anita, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Amarachi.
Well, this is BC here. Well, did it come as a surprise that President Lungu won this election?
Well, as I told you the day before the election, that was the million kwacha question. Everybody knew that it was going to be close, it was going to be tight, and nobody wanted to venture who was going to win. I guess you could liken this maybe to one of the Olympic swimming races. We know we had a strong field of competitors, a lot of competition, but who was going to eke out the win at the last second? Well, it ended up being Lungu.
Well, this result is actually a first. I mean, it's the first time in a long time that a candidate will win more than 50% of the votes. And, of course, with the election not going into a runoff, can you tell us more about what happened this time?
Well, first of all, this is because of a new rule that stipulates that a candidate can get just over 50% and avoid a runoff. So that's partially why we may not have a runoff this time. But I think what you're hitting on is something a bit deeper, which is that Zambia prides itself on having a history of peaceful elections, on having a history of peace, on having a history of peaceful transition. And with the copper price, what it is right now, which is relevant because Zambia is a copper powerhouse, Zambia is really kind of banking on that stability to attract investors. So that's why this is a little bit significant. If we have trouble around this vote, then it could scare off those very important investors.
Well, how peaceful could we say this election is? I mean, the opposition is crying foul. Mr. Hichilema, for instance, is accusing the Electoral Commission of colluding with the president. And the only female candidate also believes the result was predetermined. Was there any report of irregularities during the elections?
Right, so there were more than 120 observers from around the world observing this election, and nobody reported major irregularities. And if you'll repeat what Hichilema said, he said that he suspected the ruling party of colluding with the Electoral Commission on the vote count, which illustrates that old adage by Joseph Stalin that the people who count the votes decide everything. So on the day of polling, no, there were no major incidents. But what he's alleging is that there was something wrong with the counting process.
Well, what is the view of the Zambians on the streets? Do they actually believe this election was free and fair?
Wow, I think that really depends what area you're in. You can't localize. I mean, Zambia is not a big country, but you can't just look at everybody in the country and say, and ask them that question and expect the same response. In areas where Lungu did very well, for example, the Copper Belt, I'm sure people are very happy about this victory and think it was very fair. In the capital, it was very narrow, and then Hichilema has his own strongholds. So I really think it depends who you ask.
Well, Anita, could you talk us through what happens hereafter with the government and the opposition?
Well, I think the first thing that's really important is that a number of luminaries, a number of people who are associated with the election, with the observer mission, like Kofi Annan, like Jimmy Carter, like the head of the observer missions, are urging calm and peace. That is the first step. This is a very serious allegation, and it's now up to the opposition to decide what they want to do with that, and also up to the government to decide how they want to react to that. But everybody's urging peace. The next step for the UPND, is to challenge this in the courts. Now, there's a little interesting wrinkle there. Edgar Lungu recently appointed about 6 new justices to the Constitutional Court. 2 of them are law school buddies of his, and one of them is his distant relative, which raises some very interesting questions on how that court might lean if President Lungu is challenged. So this is, this could go very smoothly, or this could be a very interesting and possibly worrying few months ahead for Zambia.
Thank you very much, Anita, for talking to us on the program. Anita Powell is a journalist with the Voice of America. When Network Africa returns, a Johannesburg magistrate court rules that a so-called terror twins arrest was lawful. Please stay with us.